Okay, so this is what I'm going to be talking to you about today. This is what I call my roadmap slides, and you'll see I have 4 of them. So I'm first going to be talking about climate change since the 1900s. And I'm talking about it since the 1900s because that's basically when the start of the Industrial Revolution occurred. So before this time, before the 1900s, is considered natural temperature. And anything after that is what is caused by people putting greenhouse gases up into the atmosphere. So when I talk about 2 degrees above natural, I mean it's 2 degrees above what it would be if people hadn't put greenhouse gases up there. And the way we figure that out is what the temperature was before 1900s. So after I've talked about climate change since the 1900s, I'm going to then go on and talk about future climate change. That's a tough one because I don't have a crystal ball, but we're going to talk about what might happen. I have some different ideas about what might be happening. Then, since we're talking about Audubon and my true love is birds, we're going to be talking about our birds, but we also have to talk about other species, and that includes all the other animals and plants. And I have to warn you that the first, second, and third parts of my talk are kind of depressing, but if you'll hold on, what will happen is you will get to number 4, which is what we all must do. And it turns out that that is where we learn that we really can do something about that this isn't a problem that is hopeless, that we can do a lot and things can change. Now, as you're looking at my roadmap slides that have these 4 numbers on them, there'll be different birds. And on this one, it has a yellow-throated warbler. And all the birds that are on my roadmap slides are birds that National Audubon in their study has told us that they occur here in Sarasota County in the wintertime right now. But if we go up to 3 degrees above natural, they will no longer be here in the summertime. So we will literally lose the yellow-throated warbler. And that's true for all the species that are going to be on my roadmap slides. So now let's go on and talk about climate change since the 1900s. And first we can talk about how we have a new normal, obviously, but we also have a new abnormal. And this is the hottest reliably recorded temperature on Earth since 1913 was in Death Valley in California on August 16th, 2020. It was 130 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, at 104 degrees, enzymes start to denature. So humans could go inside into the air conditioning and it would be fine. But think of all the plants and animals that couldn't do that. They were literally cooking. I'm serious. They were literally cooking when it got that hot in Death Valley. So we really don't want to have this abnormal happening, but it already is. Another thing that is happening is fires. And this is a picture of the actual fire in Australia. This isn't California, this is Australia. But I've chosen this picture to show you, if you look at the flames, they are the real flames. But now look at the clouds. This is an artist's rendition of what the smoke and the clouds are going to be. And what the artist has done has drawn in the koala bears. And in the Australian fires, they literally lost over 1 billion, with a B, vertebrate individuals. This includes mammals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians. Over 1 billion individuals were killed in those fires, plus a lot more that if they survived, they had nothing to eat. So afterwards, so there was a lot of carnage. Fires don't just kill the trees, they kill a lot of the animals at the same time. And I wanted people to remember that. And now, being in Sarasota County, we all know about the hurricane season. And the hurricane season is a real crazy season this year. On November 13th, we broke another record. On November 10th, we broke the record first for having 29, the most hurricanes in one season. And then on the 13th, just 3 days later, we had another hurricane named. And now we've never ever before had a Hurricane Iota. And now we may have another hurricane coming in called Kappa. Let's hope not, but it's possible. But we do have this new normal and this new abnormal of things happening that are a lot more severe than they used to be. Now, what I want to show you is a temperature plot. And what this is showing you is the global temperature change relative to natural. So it's going up by year, and you can see it goes around in circles by month, and you can see that it's getting warmer and warmer and warmer. It goes to 2017, and you can see it almost hit 1.5 degrees C above natural. But what is going on here, these are the actual data being recorded, and you can see how it's cool in the 1800s, 1900s, early 1900s, but now it's getting warmer. And then when it hits the 70s, it really does start getting warmer and warmer and warmer. So those are the actual data. Now, what has actually gone on in the United States? Earth Day happened 51 years ago. So from 1970 to 2019, the average warming of the United States had been 2.4 degrees Fahrenheit over that 50 years. That's a lot of warming over just 50 years. And now if we look at what's gone on in Sarasota County itself, the warm summer nights, the average low temperature, so the low temperature at nights in Sarasota County has increased since the very first Earth Day in 1970 to 2018, was 5.4 degrees Fahrenheit warmer in 2018 since 1970. That's a huge, huge increase. So those are all actual data. So I would really like you all to make a pact with me today. And please don't ever again say that you believe in global warming or that you believe in climate change. It's not a belief system, it's a fact. So you can say the climate has warmed, period. You don't have to say, I believe the climate has warmed, because it literally has. The facts bear that out. Now, as the land has been warming, the other thing that's been warming has been the water. And in Florida, that's something we need to worry about too. So on the x-axis is years, and it goes back to 1955 and goes up to, I don't know, 2018 or 19. And you can see that it has warmed. It used to be cooler, and now how much warmer it is. It really is a lot warmer. The thing that is a concern for Florida is that as you warm water, it expands out, and that means sea level grows up. So we have had sea level going up for many reasons, but one of the reasons is because the water itself is actually warming. Now, what is actually causing all of this change that's going on, all of this warming? Well, this is a slide. Again, it has years on the x-axis, but it's a kind of a strange way of looking at years. It starts at now, and that now actually means today at this morning, I guess about 10 o'clock this morning, I figured out what this plot was going to be. But it goes from this morning all the way back 800,000 years ago. And they do this by looking at the ice cores. And what you can see is that the CO2 concentration in parts per million in the atmosphere has not been above 300 parts per million since 800,000 years ago to now. And now, today, the concentration, CO2 concentration, was 414 parts per million. And if you want to look up what the concentration is, you can go to Bloomberg Carbon Clock, and it is actually running all the time, and it will tell you how much carbon is in the atmosphere. And this morning it was 414 parts per million. So you can see that there has been a huge, huge input of CO2 into our atmosphere. And that is what is really causing this warming to be occurring. So that's what's happened now since the 1900s. Now let's talk about what may be going on in the future for climate change. And here's another one of those birds, the Redheaded Woodpecker, which is around here in the summertime. We can go out at the end of Fruitville on Sarasota and see Redheaded Woodpeckers nesting out there. If we go up 3 degrees above natural, Audubon says that the Redheaded Woodpecker will not be able to survive in Sarasota County. So now let's talk about future climate change. This is a plot that comes from the IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, which is about over 2,000 scientists from around the world get together every 7 years and talk about what we know about climate change. And they wanted to figure out what might happen in the future. And so they were looking at CO2 equivalent. And this is not just CO2, this is also including things like methane and water vapor and things like that. So the parts per million is CO2 equivalent, and they take this out to 2100. Well, we could first follow the black curve, and the black curve is showing you what the curve would be with business as usual. If we don't do anything, don't make any changes whatsoever, that's the curve that we are going to be on. And when Obama was president, we actually came down below the curve a little bit. Now that Trump has been president, we have gone above the curve quite a bit. But it's basically roughly what would happen with business as usual. Trump just had a lot more of oil and gas drilling, which made us go higher on that curve. Now, if we don't have business as usual, but we actually have more of an egalitarian type of society, so that the different countries are interacting with each other and sharing technology and sharing research and interacting with each other a lot, we could be on either the blue or the green curve. And the difference here is so slight, I don't really want to talk about it, but the point is that this is what we want to be doing, is we want to be on either the blue or the green curve, hopefully the green curve, because the lower, the better. Because the higher the CO2, the warmer the temperature gets. The curve that really, really scared me when I first saw this plot is the red curve. And the red curve, this was drawn in 2016, so it's an older plot, but it still works well. What they said was in 2016, God clicked her fingers and stopped all greenhouse gases from going up into the atmosphere. So she stopped all greenhouse gases. Now you would assume that the CO2 equivalents would actually drop quite significantly and quite rapidly, but it doesn't. Look at how it starts dropping a little bit here, it starts dropping down here, but it goes so slowly. The reason for that is that CO2, the strongest greenhouse gas we have, is up in our atmosphere for about 1,000 years. Now, methane is not up there that long. It's up there about 10 to 12 years. Water vapor is different, things like this, but CO2, so whatever we do right now and put CO2 into our atmosphere, it's going to be there for 1,000 years. That's equivalent to 40 generations. So what we do today affects our great, 39 greats grandchildren. Now think about that. That's really, really striking. What we do today is going to be affecting our great, 39 great grandchildren. So what we do today really matters. It really matters what we're doing, and that means we can make a difference by making a change. And that's what we'll talk about later too. Okay, now this is a plot like the one I showed you before, but instead of being actual temperature, these are modeled temperatures. And other than that, it's exactly the same, but it's going on, and it's going to go to 2100. And it fits very well with what the actual data are. Now look, it's getting warmer and warmer. Holy cow, 5 degrees C above natural. Wow, that means there's going to be a lot of suffering, a lot of anxiety, a lot of death for not just humans, but for other species on the planet. But watch, if we stay on the business as usual curve, that black curve that we're on right now, we could end up by 2100 being to 5 degrees C above natural. We don't want that to happen. We can't have that happen. And I'm going to talk to you about what we have to do to change that, because we don't want to go out to 5 degrees C above natural in 2100. Now, in Florida, we have to worry about sea level rise. And in 2018, the sea level was 8 inches above what it was in 1880. We know that for a fact. That's not questioned at all. So it's 8 inches above what it was in 1880 in 2018. Now, if you assume that the person that's standing there is 6 feet tall, in 2050, the low estimate that the scientists are putting forward now is 19 inches. And I just read an article about 3 weeks ago saying that 19 inches is kind of Pollyanna-ish. We're really not we're gonna go way above 19 inches. So that really isn't the low estimate anymore, but at the time that this was put together, it was. The high estimate is still pretty realistic. It's 31 inches. So by 2050, the sea level rise could be 31 inches. That's a lot. We're not talking about storm surge. We're just talking about sea level rise. Now, what about 2100? What can go on in 2100? The low estimate is 6.5 feet of sea level rise, and the high estimate is 9 feet of sea level rise. So if you have a house on Longboat Key or Bird Key or some of those, you're not going to be able to let your grandchildren inherit those houses. It's not going to work because they're going to be under sea level. Now, what Jack was telling you earlier is something that I just read about 3 weeks ago, that the scientists believe that we just passed the tipping point of melting ice on the Greenland ice sheet. This is the Greenland ice sheet. This picture is of the Greenland ice sheet. And I just read an article about 3 days ago that said that the survey that they had done showed that the lakes on the Greenland ice sheet were larger and deeper than they even expected. So Greenland ice sheet is melting. It's melting rapidly, and we are past the point of no return. It is going to completely melt all the way down. I can talk to you about why that will happen later if you want me to. But even if the Earth starts getting cool again, it's going to probably melt all the way down and then reform. That is between 27 and 29 feet of sea level rise. So I plotted out what 28 feet of sea level rise would look like. That is what it looks like. Where's your house? Look for your house. My house, which is, I'm on the other side of I-75, is even going to be underwater. Now, when is this going to happen? Probably not until 2200. But the point is, this is where we're heading, folks. This is the direction we are going. We are going to get there. So you have to be prepared for the fact that the sea level is going to rise. It's not going to rise this much in probably 150 years, but soon after that it will. I really don't know how soon it will rise, but anyway, that's what's going to happen with 28 feet of sea level rise. So that's the future of climate change. See, I told you this was going to be a little bit depressing. Now, let's talk about our birds and other species now. And this is a slide that I took. I was lucky enough in 1995 to go up to the 1994 to go up to the North Pole, and there was ice everywhere, and there was a polar bear out that had actually caught a seal and had killed the seal. And when it killed the seal, it got blood and guts all over the place. And the little gull, you can see the little gull here, is the ivory gull. The ivory gull makes its life by eating on the blood and guts that the polar bear spews around the ice. Well, we don't have any ice now, so the polar bears aren't going out and killing seals. It's good for the seals, but it's not good for the polar bears, and it's certainly not good for the ivory gulls. The ivory gulls are plummeting in abundance, and I will bet, I'm 66 years old, I will bet that the ivory gull goes extinct in my lifetime. It's dropping so dramatically right now. Now, as we have the changing going on with warming, things that are happening in the spring are happening earlier and earlier and earlier. So the cherry blossoms are blooming earlier in December. The birds are coming back up from migration earlier in what did I say, in December? The cherry blossoms in Washington, D.C. are blooming earlier. The birds are coming back earlier on migration. They're breeding earlier. Daffodils are coming out earlier. This is just a plot that is showing you a combination of a whole lot of studies done in Australia, in Asia, and in Europe, and in North America. And what it's showing is in 1950, whatever this is, 1957 or so, they set that at 0. And then they said, is it getting earlier or later? And earlier means minus the index, it's going down. And you can see it's going down. We couldn't put a date on it because the spring in Australia is in our fall, so we couldn't put a date. But you can say a date index, and you can see that as the time is going later from 1955 to 2015, things that happened in the springtime are happening earlier and earlier and earlier by 9 days over that time period. That's a lot. That's a big, huge change. So things are being affected. The natural world is being affected by what we are doing to our globe, by warming the globe. The other thing that is happening with species is they're changing their ranges. And this is of a study that was done when I was in graduate school by one of my advisors. And he was working in Peru. And he was looking at where the different birds were on this particular mountain. And the common scale-backed antbird was down below 800 meters. The versicolored barbet was between 800 and 1250, say. And the variable antshrike was up here at the very top. Now, the man who did this did it so well that he kept good data, and we could actually go back and redo the exact same transect and see what happened now. This is what has happened now. This is 2017. And what's happened now is the common scale-backed antbird has moved up significantly. The versicolored barbet has moved up significantly. Uh-oh, what happened to the variable antshrike? It's gone. It's been extirpated from this mountain. If this is the only mountain it occurred on, which it was not, but if it had been, then it would have gone extinct. And that's the type of species that is actually going extinct right now. Are species that are at the tops of mountains are going extinct. It's a tough thing for them to survive because it's just getting too warm for them. Now, a study was done that showed that about 3 billion birds have died, have left since 1970. So in 1970, we had about 12 billion, roughly about 12 billion birds in North America. By 2015, it had dropped by 3 billion birds. That's a lot of birds. That's equivalent of us actually losing 1 bird in 4 since 1970s. This isn't complete species, this is individuals. So before we would have a lot of individuals, now we have only 3/4 of what we used to have. That's a tough one. The birds are stressed by this. Now, this isn't due to climate change. What it really is due to is shown here is habitat destruction. Now, think about yourself as, think about you being a butterfly and trying to fly across that area. That's going to be a hard thing for you to do if you have to migrate. That's a really tough one. So habitat destruction has really, really taken its toll. And this is the overall foundation upon which we now are looking at how species are being affected by climate change. Now, what can we do about habitat destruction? Well, Audubon has come up with this fabulous, fabulous program, and it's called Plants for Birds, which we've already heard about. That's what Jack is going to be doing the triathlon for. So you can go to audubon.org/plantsforbirds. You type in your zip code, and it will tell you all the native plants that occur in your area. So I want you to make me another pact today. Please, please, please don't ever plant another non-native plant outside unless you're going to eat it. That's the only reason for planting a non-native plant. The birds really, really need those native plants in order to survive. Now, what you can do is you can look and see what plants are farther south than us. And as it starts warming, those plants will actually be wanting to be in your area. You can plant those, but that's not really truly non-native. Those are the species that will be moving as it gets warmer. But please plant native plants. We need to have native plants. Our birds do, our mammals do, our insects do. We've got to do that. And it's something that we all can do. It's not hard. You just have to do it. Now, Audubon actually wanted to know what was going on with climate change. And what they did was a study called Survival by Degrees. And they said there's 389 birds on the brink of extinction. This is if the planet goes up by 3 degrees above natural. Now, 389 birds is equivalent to 2/3 of all birds in North America. So we don't want our planet to go up by 3 degrees. We want it to stay lower than that so that that many species don't go extinct. We can't have that many species going extinct. This was shown, you can actually look at this. You can go in and you put your zip code in and it'll tell you what birds might be disappearing. And you go to audubon.org/climate/survival by degrees. And as the Audubon magazine said, birds can't fight climate change, but thank heaven we can. And there's a lot of things that we can do. Now, in this study that they did, they had over 140 million observations all over North America and into Mexico. It's a very, very, very good study. They had information on climate, on vegetation, on human land use, and the thing I call group-specific variables. So if they were looking at a water bird, they looked at rivers and lakes and oceans, things like that. That's what the group-specific variable means. And they did this whole thing at 1 kilometer squared resolution. So it's a very, very fine resolution, and you can really get down and dirty in the data, and it's absolutely fabulous. Here is the current summer range distribution of the yellow-throated warbler. If we warm up, and I hope it's if, not when, we warm up 3 degrees Celsius above natural, which is 5.4 degrees Fahrenheit above natural, we could lose 92% of the range of the yellow-throated warbler. 8% of its range will stay steady, that's the orange part, and the blue part will be gained, 19% will be gained. 92%, that's the red part, will be lost. We don't want that to happen. We don't want the globe to get up to 3 degrees Celsius above natural. So what Audubon did was say, what's it going to look like if we only go up half that much? So they looked at 1.5 degrees Celsius above natural, or 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit above natural. And if that happens, we still lose 53% of the range, but it's a lot less than for 3 degrees. 48% is staying stable, and 15% is gained. We still lose it here in Sarasota County, but we still save a lot more of its range than we would have otherwise. So that's really what we want to have happen. Now, so let's talk about Sarasota County. There are 8 highly vulnerable summer species in Sarasota County if we go up 3 degrees above natural. So you have the snail kite, the boat-tailed grackle, the fish crow, the red-headed woodpecker, the brown towhee, the yellow-throated warbler, the eastern towhee, and the gray kingbird. Now, that's if we go 3 degrees above. If instead we only go 1.5 degrees C above natural, we only have 5 species that are highly vulnerable. The snail kite, the least tern, that has to do with sea level rise, the fish crow, the yellow-throated warbler, and the gray kingbird. So that's Sarasota County. Let's talk really quickly about what's going to happen in all of Florida. There's 13 highly vulnerable summer species at 3 degrees above natural. All of the 8 that we showed for Sarasota County. In addition, you have field sparrow, the brown-headed nuthatch, the wood thrush, the whooping crane that is managed, and the pine warbler. Pine warblers are all over our yard right now, and they will be gone if we go up 3 degrees above natural. If we only go 1.5 degrees, we only lose 7 species, or there'll be 7 highly vulnerable species. The 5 that we talked about before, plus the whooping crane that is managed, and the brown-headed nuthatch. So that's a tough one. We're going to lose the brown-headed nuthatch. So that brings me now to talking about extinction. And extinction is something that happens to all species. Biologists have said that background extinction rate is you lose less than 1 species in 1,000 species over 1,000 years. Now imagine a great big huge room, and you have 1,000 species in it, and you watch those 1,000 species for 1,000 years. Less than 1 species will go extinct due to background extinction. Now let's talk about what the current rate of extinction is. It's about 1 species in 10 species, not 1,000 species, over 100 years. not 1,000 years. So it has really, really increased. So I used to say that we were right at the brink of a mass extinction event. We're not at the brink of a mass extinction event. We're already in a mass extinction event. We don't want this to happen, continue to happen. We have to stop it. And if we don't, we're going to lose a lot of species. And how many species? Well, the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, these 2,000 scientists from around the globe that got together to talk about all of this in 2007, said that if we go up 2 degrees C above natural, which is 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit above natural, we could lose about 500,000 species. We know that there are 2 million species on the planet because we have names for 2 million species. There's a lot more than that, but since we don't know the names of the others, we only concentrate on the 2 million. So that's a quarter of the species. When we go up 2 degrees C above natural, we could lose a quarter of the species. If we go up 4 degrees Celsius above natural, we could lose half the species on the planet. That's very sobering. Half the species on the planet, I can guarantee, will include species that we need, humans need, to stay alive. The other question I have is, what moral right does one species, us, humans, have to cause the extinction of all those other species? There's a moral issue here, and we need to be addressing that too. We can't have this happen. So we can't have us going up 4 degrees C above natural, and we can't have us going up 2 degrees above natural. We have to stay lower than that. So we have to get off of the business as usual curve, and we can do that. How do we do that? That's what we're going to talk about now. This is what we all must do. And the thing is, we can do it. We don't must do it, we can do it. The first thing we have to do is we have to have a paradigm shift. And we've had paradigm shifts for years and years and years. Here's an example of a paradigm shift back in World War I. Food will win the war. We observe meatless days, wheatless days, and porkless days. And we carry out all conservation rules of the US Food Administration. Here was a paradigm shift for World War I. It was patriotic to have meatless days. We could do that. This was a paradigm shift. It happened. It was patriotic, and we did it. Here's another paradigm shift. Over 20,000 physicians say Luckies are less irritating. It's toasted. So here we have an example of doctors saying that, well, I guess it's not really saying it's okay to smoke, but it's no longer, we've had a paradigm shift. It's no longer socially acceptable to smoke in public. Woohoo! We've had a paradigm shift. It happened. We've done it. We actually shifted it. What we need is another paradigm shift. Can we do it? Of course we can do it. We've done it before. Why can't we do it again? Of course we can. We just have to have the political will and the people behind wanting to do the political will. And we can do that. Now, this is a plot. I think this is the most positive plot that I can show you. What this is showing you is tons of CO2 emissions into the atmosphere per person. And this was in 2016. And this is just for the United States. So you can see there's down at the bottom here, it's not years, it's actually locations. So you have Washington, D.C. is the smallest. Then you have New York, you have California. Now, I used to be in California and I used to be able to say, I never met a regulation that I didn't like. That's what it feels like in California. We love regulations because we know that they do some good. But now let's look here at Florida. So California, right next to California is Florida. Then we have the overall US average. So Florida is below the overall US average. Mississippi is higher. Look at the difference between Florida and Mississippi. We're doing something right in Florida. We really are. California, New York, and DC know what to do. They're doing it right. And then we come to these crazy places called West Virginia, North Dakota, and Wyoming. Holy mackerel. Look at how much CO2 they're putting in the atmosphere per capita. Wow. The real reason is because they are burning coal. That's what's going on, is the coal in West Virginia, North Dakota, and Wyoming. If you own an electric car in Wyoming, it doesn't do any good if you plug it in to the socket and it's not being serviced by solar panels. If it's being serviced by the electric company, doesn't help. You're putting CO2 in the atmosphere, so it doesn't help. California, it would. Not Wyoming, not North Dakota, not West Virginia. But the good thing about this is that we have caused this problem and we know what to do to fix it. Look at what we're doing. Florida, California, New York, DC, we're all doing the right things. We know what to do. We just have to do it. Now, the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, we're so horrified that the world was going the wrong direction that in 2018, in October, they came out and they said, we have to stay at 1.5 degrees C above natural. We can't go any higher than that. And now you guys aren't listening to us. So now what we're going to do is we're going to tell you, we're going to give you a recipe of what we have to do so that we can stay at 1.5 degrees Celsius. And here's what they said. On this plot is gigatons of CO2 put into the atmosphere per year. So this is in 2010, it was almost 40. 2017, oops, it's going the wrong way. We're getting higher. What the scientists, the IPCC scientists said was by 2030, we have to be at 45% of what 2010 was. In 10 years from now, we have to be at 45% of what we emitted in 2010. Can we do it? The US can't do it. But the world, thank God for the rest of the world, they have been doing the right things and we're on track. Are we going to make it? Probably not, but we may come close. The scientists then said by 2050, we have to be to zero. That's going to be really tough because we're a plastic using society. And for every pound of plastic, we put 6 pounds of CO2 into the atmosphere. So by 2050, we have to have some way of actually scrubbing out some of that CO2 out of the atmosphere. Can we do that? Hopefully technology will help us do that. This is a hard recipe, but we can do it. And now let's talk about how we actually do that. This shows you what the greenhouse gas sources are in the United States by sector. 28% of the greenhouse gases come from the generation of electricity, 29% from transportation, 9% comes primarily from beef. So that's beef cattle and dairy cows. Commercial and residential is 12%. That's because so many of our buildings are not energy efficient. They could be energy efficient. And industry is 22%. Industry is a tough one to work on. 8% of that has to do with cement. And we use a lot of cement and it's really hard to change that. So industry is a tough one. But all these other ones we can do something about. Let's talk about what we should be doing. The IPCC scientists said for the electricity market, the percent of non-biomass renewables, so that's wind, solar, geothermal, hydro, and nuclear. By 2030, we have to have about 50% of our electricity, our non-biomass electricity generation from renewables. Can we do that in the US? Absolutely not. There is absolutely no way. But the rest of the world, can we do it? Yes, we can. And the US needs to catch up and be leaders again, and I think we can do that. By 2050, we need to be at about 75% of our electricity market coming from non-biomass renewables. Can we do that? Yes, we can. We've just got to get a plan and go for it. Now, people will say, holy moly, Terry, I'm with the Audubon Society and I don't want wind energy because it kills birds. It doesn't kill birds. They've done a study and found that on average, 3.7 birds, the small birds, not our big raptors, but the smaller birds, 3.7 birds are killed per turbine per year. 3.7 small birds are killed per turbine per year. That's because we have learned so much over the time. We know how to locate turbines so they're not going to kill the birds. We know what to do. If we allow the world to get warm, we're going to lose species, entire species. So we've got to have renewable energy. So what actually does kill our birds? Cats. Cats kill orders of magnitude more birds than turbines do. So per year, cats kill 2.4 billion with a B, birds. Every single year, cats do. We have 80 million feral cats in the US and 80 million pet cats in the US. If you have a pet cat, that's wonderful. Keep it inside. If you can't keep it inside, please don't let it out at night. It finds bird nests and it kills the babies. So we really need to have feral cats under control. That's going to be a tough political pull. I don't think we can do it. But when people are talking about turbines killing birds, think of this plot. Cats kill 2.4 billion. Turbines, which is clear down here at the other end, kills 234,000 birds. That's it. Now, other things kill birds: windows, autos, power lines, towers, and electrocution. But turbines is really not the problem. Oil and gas industry has tried to tell us that it is, and it's not. Now, the other thing we need to be doing is looking at the transportation sector. We need to have the percent of low emission vehicles by 2020 be 5% of our fleet. Did we make it? Woohoo! We made it. We really did make it. We actually are more than 5%. By 2050, we have to be between 35 and 65. Duck soup. We'll be able to do that. We can do that. All we have to do is do it. We just do it. So that's possible. What do you do about agriculture? We work on a plant-based diet. That can be a little tough for people who love their meat, but let's talk about that for a minute. What can we do? So let's go back to this plot. What we all of us that are listening to my talk, what all of us need to do for electricity, what we need to do is we need to support renewables. We need to support solar rooftops and wind farms. We need to buy Energy Star appliances, and we need to throw out all of our incandescent light bulbs, put them in the landfill. For transportation, we need to have electric vehicles. please make a pact with me today. For the next car that you're going to buy is that it will actually plug in, that it's an electric vehicle. It can be dual if you want to, but make sure that it gets at least 50 miles on electricity. What about agriculture? Well, I said plant-based diet. That's tough for a lot of people. So how about having meatless Mondays? That's a good way to do it. Or buy beef. This is bluenestbeef.com, and they grow beef in a way that is certified by the Audubon Society to support grassland birds. And what they do is they have grass-fed birds, not feedlot beef. So they have grass-fed beef instead of feedlot beef, and it makes a big, big difference. So pick a day, pick Mondays, and don't have any beef or dairy. You can do that. We all can do that. We need to have zero emission buildings. What we all can do is go to our energy companies and ask them to do a home energy audit. All of us can do that. We can do that. And then do what they tell us to do. It will save us money, and it will mean that we're putting up less CO2 into the atmosphere. Industry is tough because it's a hard nut to crack. So what I say is we need to be planting trees to pull the CO2 out of the atmosphere and making it have less CO2 in the atmosphere by planting the trees. And an organization that does that, there's a lot that do it, and many of them do it wrong. The best one that I have found by far is a place called cooleffect.org. It's a good Christmas present. You can go on and figure out what your brother's carbon footprint is going to be for the year. And you pay them the money, and they will plant trees to counterbalance your brother's carbon footprint. My brother absolutely loves that as a Christmas present. So try it sometime. The next thing that we all have to do is vote. I know this seems a bit out of place because we've already voted, but we're going to vote in the future. So everybody needs to vote, even if it's for the HOA, whatever you're voting for, it's your voice, and you're getting your voice out there, and you're concerned about climate change. You can make a difference with your vote. So this was a picture that was taken on Christmas Eve in 1968 and showed us just how fragile our Earth is. It's the only Earth we've got. It's the only one that we have to take care of. We've got to take care of it, because if we don't, the human suffering and the other species suffering is going to be enormous. So there's things we can do, easy to do, we just have to do it. So I really greatly appreciate you all listening to me. Thank you very much.